I have a question. Is Alan here?
No,
So, I won't ask them. I was just curious about a couple of the accounts that the high school have, like, a lot of money in. Yeah, so. And I assume the band was probably because they're going on a trip, but then like the cheerleading fund has like 13,000 as well. I was wondering.
They do a ton of fundraisers.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they spend all their money on.
Uniforms and camps.
They do the camp, would be a big one that's coming up this summer.
But he's not here, so.
When you motion to approve the agenda?
I know that
You know what, they also go to Boise and they do go to Boise and watch no, they go to a football game.
it's true.
And watch the cheerleaders for how they do the football games. But they do their own fundraisers.
For the second, Paul's motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Oh,
All in favor?
aye.
Given. Okay. And personnel?
We just did it.
That's all part of the
Yeah,
consent
that's all part
agenda.
All right, we're down to D, public to be heard. We have a lot of people here tonight, so does anybody have a spokesman for a specific issue? If not, everybody's entitled to be heard, but if you can limit to about 3 minutes each, would appreciate that. And when you stand, please give your name, because the meeting is being recorded, so you need to hear your name, and you can come forward, please. So who's first?
My name's Janelle Sharp, and I'm here in regards to the incident, the same thing I was here last month about, the incident that happened at the school and the lack of a policy. That seems to, we don't have a policy for that. I spoke with Mr. Brogan after that meeting to ask him why there wasn't that item on the agenda. And from our discussion, what I took away from that was that it had been handled, and you can correct me if I didn't, interpret that right, that it had been handled, and that if it happened again, there would be something done about it, and he didn't want to tie his administrator's hands with a policy. And so I was pretty discouraged about that after the conversation, and then Saturday, Mr. Vilt spoke with me and said that it would be on the agenda today. So I spoke with Mr. Brogan and said, am I close on time? Am I okay for time? That my, I wanted a zero tolerance policy. I had, in discussion with some friends and speaking with some school board members, and I've had a month to think about it. For me, that zero tolerance policy would include the possibility of expulsion. If I had the power to make that policy right now, I would like to see immediately 2 weeks of suspension followed by mandatory counseling for the family or the person involved. And if the family didn't want to do that, then they would be expelled. That would be that's my opinion about it. I don't think that the suspension that was given was appropriate for what happened. I've spoken with parents whose children saw what happened, and I wish they were here tonight to tell you the effect that had on their kids. And you guys have the power to make a policy that would be a deterrent for that in the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm Lorena Newsbaum. I agree with everything that she said. I took it a step further. I called an officer, Montpelier City police officer, and I asked him what would happen if I was in a public building engaged in sexual activity. And he said that it would be a crime. I said, all right, let's take this a step further. What if we're talking about 2 teenagers in a public building? And he said it would still be a crime, but it's going to vary depending on the ages of the children involved and so forth. And I said, what if we're talking about at the high school? And he said, are we talking about the incident in the parking lot by the football field? And I said, no. So apparently we have a bigger problem than what we think. I mean, it's still, by the football field is still school grounds. And so I asked him, I gave him the ages of the kids involved, and he said that immediately what comes to mind would be indecent exposure, because children walked in and saw what was going on. Disturbing the peace, anything that is obscene, whatnot, it does qualify, sexual activity does qualify as disturbing the peace. Fornication, it's illegal for any unmarried couple to have sex in the state of Idaho. It's not a law that is widely used, but it is a law. And he said rape, intercourse with a female who is less than, he said 18, but he believes it's down to 16 years of age, is illegal regardless of the age of the defendant. So and he said also lewd and lascivious conduct would be kind of in there too. So I kind of have a couple questions. Why were the police not called when this is clearly a crime? And as a school district, aren't they mandatory reporters? Why was this not reported?
My comment would be he needs to talk to his supervisor, because I spoke with his supervisor and he said that there were no charges to be pressed there.
And when I looked this up online today, it's pretty clear.
Well,
Or credible witnesses.
I mean, he talked about the fornication thing and said that in essence that could be prosecuted, but they would not, and he said that he was informed that the prosecutor would not prosecute juveniles for underage consensual sex in this county. So they were not to bring those before him.
Shame on him.
I'm just telling you what we were
Shame on
told.
him.
So,
Okay, I have a different view.
State your name, please.
Shelley Sherman. And I did also talk to Chief Butler while texting, and I asked him if I could have permission to use his words, because I believe,
Excuse me, you're interrupting. Chief Butler is no longer
or
here.
I mean Roper, sorry. I
okay, I didn't
keep
know
doing that, sorry. I believe that kids are kids. Yes, they make mistakes. I do believe there should be a policy. I don't believe expulsion, because look at our community. Honestly, kids that get kicked out of school or drop out, are they contributing to our community? They're not. Is it our responsibility to help them? And this is what Chief said. He says, I think keeping kids in school and learning and regulating their behavior, temporary discipline, is more productive than just saying, I'm sorry, you're done. I asked my 2 girls who are in high school what they thought, and my youngest said counseling. And I think that's huge. I think we should have counseling for these kids. I know of 3 incidents. I also had the opportunity of talking to Police Officer Martinez on the way in here, and he said, yes, it is a problem. Because I just said, well, I've got you. And he said, yes, it is a problem at the schools. It's happening more and more. There should be a policy. But I do not believe 2 weeks expulsion or suspension even is okay. We want these kids in school. And if you look at the kids who are doing these things, they are the ones that need to be in school. If we say, you know what, I'm sorry, for the trail of clothing that was left in the locker room, I think maybe teach our kids, if you come upon an incident, what do? Do you follow it and go look? No, it's like the internet. You have a computer. If you happen upon porn, it's going to happen. But you teach them, what do you do in that case? I worked at the hospital. I happened to push on the wrong button. It popped up. I panicked. I didn't know what to do because I'd never even thought, what do I do? Teach these kids what to do in the situation if you happen upon it. Teach these kids how to avoid it. Teach these kids, educate them. Maybe a sex ed class in school. Educate, educate, educate. Don't just give up on them. And don't, the parents whose kids these are, honestly, are they going to be the ones that come into the school and talk to them? Are they going to be the ones that care? A lot of times, no, they're not. So we can't even rely on the parents because a lot of them don't care or they're too busy. So I just think there should be a policy, and I think we've got to keep each kid in mind. They are special. They just need help. And I think as a school system, maybe we should do as much as we can to help them.
Thank you.
I'm Holly Collins, and I feel very strongly that there needs to be a policy set in place. I think of the parents that had children that walked in and saw that. I know me as a parent, I have done everything that I can possibly think of to protect my children from pornography, and I do think that that is something that can be done. I don't think that I can protect them their whole life, but the last place I want my kids to see pornography is in school. And I don't think it's unfair of me to say that I expect my school to not have that remotely available there. When I was in the 5th grade, I got in trouble for beating up the school bully. I pushed him down, took off his shoe, and threw it in the ditch. And he had been beaten up on other kids, and I felt justified in what I did. But it was wrong. Wrong is wrong. My punishment in elementary school was that I had to stay in from recesses, and I had to wash the school desks and chairs and pick off gum underneath the tables. And I had to do that for a full week. And yeah, that's not much, but why can't we have something in place like that where they wouldn't have to miss school, but maybe after school they could stay after for a couple hours and scrub chairs, scrub tables. And I think it should be public. I think everybody should see that there's a huge penalty for what they've done, and it should be embarrassing. It should be shameful. And I think that if I was to go in that locker room and have sex with my husband, I would go to jail, and I deserve to go to jail. Kids, whether they're 10 or 14 or 16, however old these kids were, they know what's right, they know what's wrong, and there should be a consequence. And if our prosecutor is such a loser that he doesn't think that it's prosecutable, I disagree strongly, and that's really sad. It's wrong. But there needs to be something in place so that doesn't happen again. And, you know, I think when I was telling somebody about it, oh, are you talking about the time last year where they caught kids in the closet having sex? She talks about somebody out on the football field having sex. Obviously, it's a problem. Something needs to be done about it.
Thank you.
My name is Alexis Skinner, and I had a son who walked in, and he saw everything. And I mean, when you walk in the locker room and you see bra on the ground and panties, you're thinking, which guy's wearing these? I do think something should be in place. I don't know if I think expulsion is the way to go, but it's becoming a problem, and it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And they got kicked out of Dan's last year for having sex at Dan's. The same 2 kids, they've been caught having sex. This is not like a brand new thing. And so I feel like something should be done. They don't care. They're not embarrassed. They could care less what happens. But I do think something should be put in place. My son came home. He's like, went into the locker room tonight and saw those 2 having sex. Got to see everything on her. And I am all for sex education, but that is not the way I want it to be portrayed, given out. And so, like I said, I think something should be put in place. I do know that the superintendent did what he did. I do know that he called around, asked other schools. This is not, nobody knows what to do. That's kind of where we're at this point. So I get what they did. Everybody did what they did, but at this point we need to put something in. My other problem that I have with the high school is I feel like there are no teachers and no Mr. Schwab ever in the hall. And I can tell you that because I've talked to kids who go to high school. When I was in school, I had Hawkeyes for a principal. I had Glay Homer. You didn't get away with anything. He was walking the halls 24/7. Teachers were in the halls in between classes until the last kid was running the class. That would be Scott Coons, Ken Parks, you name it, they were out in the hall. There are no teachers that go out in the hall. If they are, they're rare. And I know Mr. Schwab does not. He's never anywhere. I don't know where he is. And I feel like when kids have that, they see somebody, it kind of makes them think, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this. I'm not saying it's going to solve the problem, but it makes kids worry a little bit. The teacher's there. Somebody's going to catch us. And so that's my feelings on the whole thing. Like I said, I feel like people are trying to do what they can, so I'm not saying nobody has, but something has to be put in because it's just going to get worse. And like I said, I really don't want my kid to go to school again and come home and say, I got to see it all again, because it wasn't something he wanted to see. He was like, go home and do it somewhere else, just not at the locker room.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, I'm Sarah Lusk. I'm at 172 South 9th Street in Montpelier. I was asked to come and talk about why we pulled our children out of school before this incident really even happened or came out. We have pulled 2 of our 4 children out of school. Our youngest does not attend school and probably will never attend school in this district. And I can give you a list of reasons why. First of all, in the first week that we had our children in school, my children came home and said, Mom, I have learned more bad language than I ever thought I would ever know or ever wanted to know. In the first week that they were in school, my daughter was in a class where one student set another student's hair on fire, and she had to sit next to that and witness that. When we went to parent-teacher conferences for the first time, we had a teacher admit that he cannot control his class. He sat there and said, why are you here at parent-teacher conference when your daughter doesn't cause any problems? I can't control the rest of the class except for your daughter and one other kid. I was flabbergasted. I never expected a teacher to address me that way as, why are you coming to parent-teacher conference? Why do you care? Why are you here trying to make sure things are happening the right way? Next, we had a lack of knowledge about classes. We went to parent-teacher conference, and when we came into the district, when we moved here, we moved in a couple months, or a couple weeks after the school started. Our kids had been homeschooled before, and Miss Mannion asked us, well, what math class should Christina go into? And we said, well, what are our options? And she says, well, she could go into pre-algebra or algebra. And we said, well, if there's no difference, let's put her in pre-algebra so it's not a stressful situation as she's getting, acclimatized to being in high school in a new environment with new people. Parent-teacher conference, the teacher just happens to mention, well, this is an extracurricular. This isn't even a math credit. Why was that not mentioned when we were picking a math class for our child? So she spent a whole semester in something that didn't really matter because she could do another extracurricular and get the same kind of credit. Next, another lack of knowledge about classes and laws and procedures. When we went to remove our daughter from high school, we were told, you can't do that. Really? Not according to Idaho state statutes. And we had to educate Ms. Mannion and the principal about what we are allowed to do with our child. Another reason why we pulled our daughter out of high school, one time a student in one of her classes, a teacher's aide, and a teacher all got into an argument. Our daughter just happened to be a friend of this child that was in this altercation between 2 adults and 1 student, which why that ever happened, I'm not really sure. But she was then asked to leave the classroom with the student and babysit him and be the mediator between the 2 adults and the student. And I don't think my child should have ever had to miss class time to become a babysitter for 2 teachers and a student. So at Christmas time, she came and asked us if she could be removed from school. And I said, well, why? Because Mom, I'm being spiritually stifled at this school. I go to school every day, and I feel the Spirit leave me, and I don't want to go. So I said, you know what? Yes, we will bring you home, because that's not the future I want for my kids. We took our son out of middle school because of different reasons. There were some bullying issues, and I'm not there every day, so I wasn't sure what happened, but you know what? He came to us and he says, Mom, I want to leave. I'm feeling bullied and I don't like it, and so we said okay. Another issue that we had, is that there was some drug education. We don't feel that's the way our kids need to learn about drugs, is from DARE or any kind of program like that. So we signed form that specifically said we do not want our child to participate in a survey. He comes home and says, oh, I had to take the survey. They made me take the survey. When we asked about it, they said, well, we threw that many surveys away. Well, that's not the form that we signed. We signed a form saying we didn't want our son to take this survey. And I understand that might work for policies and, and it might be easier, I understand that. But that's not what we signed. That's not what we wanted as parents for our child. And this newest issue that happened, our daughter still goes to seminary and still goes to one class at the high school. She goes to Greenhouse, and she loves it, and I'm glad. So I still worry about her with these other issues going on. And I understand that kids will be kids. Trust me, I understand more than most people. Because between my junior and senior year, I got pregnant. And I was expelled from school. I didn't have sex on campus. But I was expelled because I was a pregnant senior in a school, and they didn't want that influence around the rest of the kids. But I'm happy to say that I stand here as a contributing member to society. I think those stiff consequences play a huge part in the future of these kids.
1 minute.
Okay? And I think that influences that we have at the school contributes to the actions that we're seeing. I was really disappointed with a book that was required reading from the state of Idaho for our daughter for Akadeka, which is Dr. Zhivago. It talks about a man choosing between his wife or his his mistress committing adultery. It's just, what are we putting into the kids' heads? And I think, we just really, there's big problems with this, and I think we really need to take a look at what's really happening at these schools, because a lot of people don't know, and it's scary and it's sad.
Thank you.
My name is Mikkel Holt. I have a middle schooler who goes into high school next year, and these things cause me trouble. They cause me stress. I don't want my child being exposed to such behavior. And at what point do we allow kids to be kids and not hold them accountable for their actions? A slap on the wrist or a slap on the hand does not correct bad behavior. For example, my stepbrother, Athos Simmons Gomez, threatened to blow up the school about 2 years ago and received a slap on the wrist. And now, because of other actions that he's chosen to do, and because he wasn't held accountable for his behavior, he's in a treatment program for sex offenders. I don't want that for any kid. I don't want my son to walk into school and be exposed to behavior that he should not be exposed to. We need to hold our children responsible. We need to hold them responsible for actions that they choose to take, and we need to have a stiff policy that says this is not acceptable. Not acceptable. And it's up to the school board and us as parents to help implement that policy. So I'm asking you to please hold our children responsible for things that should not be occurring on school property.
Thank you.
My name is John Lusk. Chief Roper talked to us about our child. We had a child. I'm Sarah's husband, and we have a freshman. And he came out and told us that we need to talk to our daughter and be careful, because there's a bunch of seniors that are trying to have sex with the freshmen. It's like a game. It's a contest to see who can do the most, the best, whatever. At what point are these kids considered sexual predators? If any of the adults were trying to chase people like that, they'd almost be considered a sexual predator. But they're turning this into a game. They're turning it into something that if the kids are just make a stupid mistake, that's one thing. But if these boys are trying to actually prey upon the girls, I think something definitely needs to be done with that. And expulsion would definitely be part of that. Get rid of these sexual offenders in our schools if this is what they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mandy Johnson. I'm a Montpelier, and I'm kind of
have a lot of mixed emotions about the events that happened at the high school. And when I first heard what had happened and what was going on, then my immediate response was, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous and that's intolerable, and I think they need to be expelled, and I hope they, had it to them, because if that was my son that walked in on there, and I do my best to protect my children, and we have rules in our home that to protect them, and per se, and so that was my immediate thought was that. And then as I've thought about things and thought about, seeing the other side of things, then I think, I don't know, maybe my heart's just softened, I don't know, but I feel like my first response was probably wrong, and I think expulsion is not the right thing in these circumstances, just because these kids need a chance, and as we've already discussed some of the negative things that are going on in our schools, it is kind of hard. And I think, some of these kids may be fine to go home and watch TV for a few days or a few weeks, and that's not going to be that harsh of a thing. And so I think making them be in school and making them come up with I don't know what's legal to have consequences be, but I agree that there needs to be some sort of, punishment, some counseling, maybe a nice research paper of something that goes along with the subject. I don't know. I just think that you have to love these kids no matter what, if they've made mistakes, and there has to be some redemption. And I've seen it happen. I've had an experience where, with my nephew, I'm going to get teary-eyed, he made one mistake in high school when he was here, and that one mistake has affected his whole life, because he had to move, for one, and it was just hard for him to get back in the gear of having school. He was forced to online school. Those online credits didn't cover it, so he lost his hope to get back on track. And so now he did finally get his GED, and he works his guts out in a coal mine, and which is good money, and it's good whatever, and he's maybe content with that. But maybe if somebody would have just given him a chance, pulled him in and said, hey, we love you anyway, and we want to make things the best for you that we can do. So just, I don't know, I trust that you'll do the right thing. There are some negative things that are going on in our schools. It's like that all over, but there's also some very great things that are going on, and we have some great teachers, and some of those teachers can be those ones to reach out to these kids that need help, and I know they would be willing to do that on their off time. So maybe coming up with a program, and this community is great at volunteering, and maybe asking people to help with this program, whether or not the legality issues are one thing, but maybe we need some sort of program to help these kids. We have community service for the law enforcement, but maybe we need something like that in our schools to be able to say, hey, we're not going to tolerate bullying. You're going to get in trouble. There's going to be a consequence. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go work with Mandy Johnson, because she's going to work you really hard and make you do this and this and this, because believe me, I've got all sorts of ideas in my brain of things that they could do to make our community great. So that's what I ask, is that you just keep that in mind and rely on the people that are positive and that are willing to help and make a difference, and just, anyway. But I totally agree that there needs to be a policy, and it's too bad that there wasn't one in place, and so to prevent that from happening again, then please consider making a policy, and hopefully it can have a positive outcome for everybody involved. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Cassie Sharp, and I'm a senior at the high school. And I actually found out about this incident a couple days after it happened through some other students and stuff. And as a student going to that high school, there's a lot that goes on that I don't think ever reaches the top, that only kind of circulates through all the students. And there's stuff that goes on in the students that the students don't even know about. And as a student, I go to school to learn. I don't know about any of the other students, but I go to school to learn. And I don't want to have that affect my education, because it does. I'm not going to lie. Going to class and knowing that someone next to me has been having sex in the locker room is not okay to me, and it makes me really uncomfortable, and it makes it hard for me to learn. And so I think that there should be a policy that makes these students responsible for what they did. Going to school and learning and seeing different policies that have been put in the high school and seeing how students are treated, it really depends on the student how you're treated. I will say that there are students that two different students will do the same thing, and one will be punished different than the other one, and they should be punished the same way. And so I really think that this policy needs to be strictly enforced, and I think that the students need to own up to what they did. They can't just be told, oh, that wasn't okay, now go sit at home. They need something that will make them not ever want to do that again.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once? What? Look right out.
Last minute, I know. Okay. My name is Lexi Sherman. I'm a junior at the high school, and sitting here and listening to all this, I didn't realize looking from the outside in, our school does seem a little bit sketchy, you hear not good things, and you're like, wow, do I really want my kid to go there? But going to high school, and I have loved going there. Yes, there's the bad, but there's also the good. And I do think that policies need to be enforced, and especially with that situation. But then again, I do look at the kids. I know the kids, and they're all great. They're good kids, and I think that they do need a chance too. But yeah, a policy does need to be enforced. And I think that our school is great just like the way it is, and that, yeah, the teachers may need to be a little bit more strict about some things, but I've loved going to the high school, and I'll be sad to leave next year, but I do think that there's a policy, but I wouldn't go as strict as expulsion or suspension for too long. But that's just my opinion.
Lexi, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You weren't referring to one of my children when you said it bad.
No, I love your voice.
Anybody else have anything to say? Clover, you going to say anything?
Soaking it all in.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming. Really do appreciate it. This is how change is made. We do have a policy, and part of the policy is in handbooks. It's public display of affection will not be tolerated within the building or by or on campus. Holding hands is the limit. Respect each other as young men and young ladies should. So we do have a policy. When this did take place, I believe that Mr. Schwab did follow policy. He checked with other school districts to see what they would do, what they have done in the past. So we're going to consider everything that was discussed tonight. We don't just blindly take it in and say nothing. So we're going to do something, so be assured we're going to do something. But the policy we do change is going to be based upon partly what we feel the law is and what the parents and everybody has participated in tonight. So we will make some type of change. It's important. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to feel comfortable with coming to the school board and discussing what your feelings are. This is what the public part of this is. I wish more parents would come to school board meetings like you have done tonight. But most parents don't care. You care. You show that you care. You care about your family and your children. So we appreciate that. So we will take some type of action, and we will change the policy. Be assured of that. And so we do appreciate your coming. Anybody else have anything to say before I close? Yes?
When can we expect a change to be implemented?
Before the change can be made, it has to be this policy we have to follow.
Okay.
And that policy is coming in with a change, that we discuss it and put it up for discussion the second time, and then we adopt it, whatever that policy is. So we can't just, yes?
When you do come up with the policy, is it solid? Do we have any say?
Well, this is your time right now. This is your opportunity to put your input in.
But the public display of affection is already not being enforced in the school. I mean, boys and girls, there's some seniors and juniors here
I mean, you've got boys and girls doing it, girls and girls together doing it. I mean, it's not being enforced now.
Well, when the policy is changed, augmented, we'll do our best to enforce it. But, we're not a police nation too. Everybody has their individual rights, and sometimes teachers don't see what's going on, and sometimes we don't have credible witnesses. If a person wants to come forward and make an accusation that's credible, that's one thing. But don't listen to all rumors. All rumors are not true. A lot of times people will embellish on something that happens. In my law enforcement career, I found that out, that people will embellish. And when you think you have a credible witness, it turns out they're not credible. So don't listen to rumor, stick to the facts. And this is what we try to do as a school board, is look at the facts, hear the facts, and take the facts that we have. So we will take into consideration everything that was said tonight, be assured of that. Yes?
Another thing, in that policy there, it just says that it's not tolerated. It doesn't say what the consequence is. I think the problem with today's children is that they get away with pretty much everything, and there's no respect. And if there is no consequence for getting in the cookie jar, spit in it. That's the consequence.
Yeah, what is the consequence for a public display of affection? What is it? Is there a consequence?
That's one issue that we're going to be discussing, what the consequence should be. Just a sign of the times, this way society is today. I mean, from the...
We shouldn't endorse that.
Pardon me?
We shouldn't endorse that.
I agree. So we'll do something. We really appreciate you coming. But on the other hand, whatever decision we're going to make, somebody out there is not going to like it. And we'll make a decision, let's say, well, it's too easy. Somebody else will say it's too hard. So we can't please everybody, so we have to please the majority for the good of our society here in Bear Lake County. So be assured that we will do something. Yes?
I mean, are our comments going to be funneled down to Mr. Schwab? Because, I mean, I didn't see him here tonight, and, I mean, he never even came to talk to us about why we removed our children, so I'm feeling a lack of concern on his part, and I'm wondering what your guys' role is going to be to step in and
Mr. Schwab is ill tonight, so that's why we'd like you to excuse him. He would have been here except for his illness.
Well, I know, I'm just going off, you said not to embellish, and I'm just going off my past history with him, where we had our children in school with him for 4 months, and he never even came to talk to us about anything, even when we pulled out our children, so.
Did you talk to the superintendent?
We met in passing when we asked about how many classes our Christina could take, and he wasn't sure, and so we had to look up some law, and
Which Mr. Schwab got back to you on that, correct?
Miss Mannion did.
Okay,
We never
then?
heard from Mr. Schwab. He never asked why we removed our children. The only school we haven't had any issues with is the elementary.
Well, again, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And we will, take this under consideration and do the appropriate thing. We appreciate it.
Your input. I was elected to cover from Paris that way. And you all have an elected board member, and I would suggest your input go to them, us, and that's where we're going to get input. Because once we start the second part of this meeting, there's not much in the way of public input. So it needs to come to me with a phone call, or to any one of the people here, not particularly Dr. Brogan.
Could we get your phone number?
Certainly. I'm in the phone book under Bill Pettis.
What's your name?
Bill Pettis, P-E-T-T-I-S. I'm the only one in the valley. It's pretty easy to find me. I'm up where the snowdrifts are.
We're on the website, are we not? Phone numbers.
We're here to serve the patrons of this county, but we can't do anything unless we hear from you. So we really appreciate you coming tonight. It's very important. We'll move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 1 under my report, school safety update. We met our administrative meeting on Tuesday last week. We had Chief Roper and Detective Wells here, as well as Alan Eborn, who's the county, I don't know what his official title is, but he's county emergency specialist, I guess, something of that nature. We scheduled what we're going to call a tabletop exercise for, I believe, 29th of May. We're gonna get all those agencies together and do some practical application of emergencies within our buildings and so forth. So, as well as they've been doing some training and some things like that, so they get to know our buildings and so forth. Just wanted to update you. If you want to come to that, you're more than welcome to. I'm not sure yet where that would be. I'm going to incorporate item 2 and item 5 together. This is something that you probably have heard about. Pass this down. Is that the numbers at our high school are reaching a level of where we would be classified as a 2A school. So I want to, as training, I want to talk to you about the process that happens there, so that you're familiar with that, and get your feedback on a couple of items, or basically a concept there. So here's what happened. This last year, for example, Shelley moved from a 4A to a 3A. And now there's a 2-year process, of which this year is the year that they take attendance numbers. They take that with our November count, and they take that again in March. There's the second page that I gave you there shows the numbers. You got to flip it over for the 2As, because what they did is this is the page of current year where everybody's at. Can everybody see this? That's where everybody's currently at. Then this page is the numbers where schools would fall if those numbers held true. And as you can see, the numbers off to the right, they simply divide the actual number in half, and then that's for the November count. The March count is not on here yet. They get that from the State Department of Education. They add those two together, and if you fit within the classification, then that's where you will fall. For example, as you can see on this page at the top, it gives those classification numbers, of which a 2A is 160 students, 319. A 3A, which is where we're at this year and will be next year, is from 320 to 639. And so this year they'll take that attendance. Next year is a grace year, and then the following year we would move. So that would be fall of, we're going to be fall of 13 to be fall of 14 before we would change classification. There are ways of opting out of a classification. They've gotten more and more difficult over the years. Basically, if you want to move down, the state has approved those under a couple of conditions. One of which is if your actual numbers aren't within that classification, you're not eligible for district and state competition. And the other is if you currently aren't there, and that you have to have a vote from every superintendent in that classification, and then a majority vote would allow you to move down if you don't qualify. Well, most school districts aren't in real favor of bigger schools coming down to smaller classification. However, as you can see in those numbers right there, and our numbers at the high school are less than that for March, so I don't think there's going to be an issue that we will fall into the 2A classification. I'm not going to tell you that the option isn't there to petition. Basically, like I said, to go up, there's usually not a lot of resistance for schools to go up if you're smaller. The majority of that resistance is for bigger schools to come down if they don't fit. So that would take place once again, fall of 14, if those numbers held. Questions about any of that?
What are those numbers out here on the right?
That's their formula. So they take that number, divide it in half, put it out there, then they do the same thing with the March number. Take that March number, divide it in half, and then add those two together. And if you fall, then basically it's an average within that range, then that's where you go classified.
If you look at the numbers of the 3A, of what is in our district right now, they're quite a bit bigger except for Marsh Valley. Quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, if you flip that page over, For example, Snake River 521,
American
Falls 400, and Marsh Valley 327, and we're right at just a little over 300 right now for our population high school is. I'm going to give you a philosophy, and you can do with it as you please, but I kind of went through this process in Grace, and there was some turmoil with it, but I believe there's a reason for classification in that on average, you'll have some good years and bad, but on average, you'll have so many athletes, if you will, for any given 50 or 100 kids. Therefore, we don't play the Boise's and the Meridians and the Idaho Falls schools as far as our district and state competition go, because our chances of beating them and ever winning the state title would be next to nothing if that were the case. You can see what, Snake River has typically dominated our district, and I think right there's the reason. They have more students than anybody else. And so that's the kind of thing that we're facing. There's schools that kind of go a couple different directions there. As far as travel goes, I don't see, we're playing a lot of those 2A schools now. We play Soda Springs in a lot of things. We play West Side in a lot of things. Actually, Coach Carlson talked to me, and I think for next year, he's even picking up Aberdeen. And so basically we would pretty much have our schedule built if we were to go 2A.
They're tough, though.
Some of those schools are.
Our district is tough on the 2A.
Some of them vary as far as, programs that they have that are tougher than others, for sure. We've been competitive, but we haven't dominated even those levels. So, unless I hear great opposition from the board, basically my understanding is that if the numbers fall there, we just automatically fall into that movement, and then fall a little forward, we could drop down if our numbers hold to that.
Okay.
Questions, discussion, comments? In the 2A classification, you do have some schools such as Grace that participate in wrestling and golf, because the 1As do not have their own. They would not participate with us in football or anything like that, but I'm trying to think what else. That's pretty well it. Soccer, 2As participate with the 3As in soccer. They don't have a 2A, I don't believe.
So we probably wouldn't change a whole lot than what we have now, other than if we played American Falls and Marsh Valley, it would be like playing Soda Springs and Malad now. It would be our district, but we'd probably still play them, just not the district.
Yeah, some of those. We wouldn't probably be picking up Aberdeen. The two schools I think he dropped, he had one game with Grace and he had one game with Skyview. And those are the two games that he dropped in order to pick up Aberdeen in basketball. Travel, I haven't put an actual pencil to it, but it's going to be pretty close to what we've been doing. If not, I would say a little less. You have Snake and AF, and you've got Aberdeen that offsets one of those, but not both of them. So, other questions? Okay. Item 3, listed policy discussion. That's in relation to what we've been talking about here, and I'm going to kind of open that up. That's not so much a report, but for you to give me your feedback and where you want to go from here.
I think we need to be more specific under the code of conduct and change some of the wording and perhaps come up with a penalty for first offense and second offense. And take into consideration what we heard from the public tonight. Paul? You're,
I agree, we need to do something. First of all, we'd have to create a policy, because this is a code of conduct in the handbook, so we don't have a policy that specifically addresses this issue. I think we need to get one. You know, we've got some proposed new language there. Is that just for the code of conduct, or is that directed towards a policy?
It could be both, but that's directed specifically at the high school handbook.
You know, it's a fine line, you know. I've sat here long enough to know you hold these young people's future in your hands. And it might not seem much to you guys sitting out there, but a decision you make here can have lifelong implications, as was stated before. And I learned a long time ago, and right or wrong, from a person that I truly admire, and he always told me, he said, I'd rather err on the side of mercy. And that's my mantra, be it right or wrong. I'd rather err on the side of mercy. And that's kind of where I come from. Sure, there needs to be a penalty, and I'm not going to say there shouldn't be, but that's where I'm coming from.
I think this needs to be a standalone policy. It needs to come out of code of conduct. If you want to make some generic issue in there, it needs to, we need to give the administrators A, B, C, D and let them administer A, B, C, D. It doesn't get to us till it goes through you. But if we make a policy, and again, that's what I was talking about with public input, it makes it much easier for us to do business. And I agree with Paul. The minute you close the door on some of them, you do not come back. And I taught school in Texas, and did we have this problem in Texas? I don't know, but we had a school that had 3,000 kids in it. In Bear Lake, we don't have 3,000 kids. So things travel faster via the...
You didn't have Facebook either, Bill.
That's true. that was not alive and well at that time.
That's the fastest way of travel I've ever seen.
But River City can travel from one end of this county to the other and back to the middle again in about 2 minutes on a slow day. And that's Bear Lake. But if we don't give the administrators something to work with, then our expectations for both the students and the administrators are out left field.
Judy?
Well, I'm a little more than frustrated a little bit, because it's hard for me to discuss how I feel without having the dress code come up. I'm a little bit irritated with that. I don't understand why we have a stronger push for wearing sunglasses and we're allowing this kind of thing to happen in the school. In the dress code, if any of you were here, I totally push for morals. The moral part needs to be covered. But to bring all the other little things in, like sunglasses and stuff like that, I thought was just trying to not get along with the kids. But sex in the schools is wrong. It's wrong to me. So I totally believe in what Paul says too, though. So it is a fine line. I worked with a lot of kids over the years, and I know what happens when kids get totally knocked out for a stupid mistake. And I don't have the answer to how to teach kids from stupid mistakes. I don't.
You make millions off that.
But I can tell you I still love them, even though they make stupid mistakes. I don't think there's a kid in that school that I don't love. Because I love teenagers. I think they're the most wonderful. But I just love them to death. And I have 4. And no, they're not perfect, but to me they are. I do agree, though, with your daughter that some kids get treated different than other kids do. I do believe that. But we do need to have a policy to take care of that. I do think we need a policy with a consequence.
So I'm hearing, if I want to get a consensus here, I'm hearing you tell me that you want me to write a policy and to include specific punishments as first offense, second offense type things. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I just don't see that there should be a stronger punishment for a child that's defending themselves in a bully fight. They get a stronger punishment for than someone having sex in a public building. And whether it's consensual sex or not is still against the law. It is. There's laws being broken.
As well as there would be for fighting.
There is, but there's a lot stronger punishment for defending yourself because of the zero tolerance policy. But I also don't think that I want to turn into a witch hunt like a lot of other things happen either. So.
I think once a new policy has been established and it's disseminated amongst the students as well as the parents, that in itself will be a deterrent. But if it's violated, we have to follow through with the conditions of the policy, in particular the penalty. There should be a penalty. You do the crime, do the time. And through my law enforcement career, I arrested thousands of people who were young kids, young people who made a stupid mistake, but they have to suffer the consequence. Now in this case, I don't think the consequence should be drastic, but I think there should be a first and a second offense. First offense, I agree with, brought up counseling. There should be some counseling, and there's remedies for that. Because I believe you need to save a kid too, not just toss them aside. But there are kids who are defiant, who are criminals, who are bringing drugs in their campuses who are criminals. They need to be dealt with. So.
Are we allowed to comment at all right now?
No, not this time. You had your time.
I have a suggestion, but that's
Okay.
it.
So I will.
I have a suggestion, and it's a question you can get, and I heard that from someone out there, and thank you very much. Community service. The question would be from me, does that have to be court ordered, or can we include that? Working with the DA or whomever, the judge, the sheriff.
I can tell you our court ordered guy that takes care of community services overwhelmed already.
And I don't see them taking on our discipline, if you will, in the form of community service. We would have to do that ourselves.
That's a keeper to me. That's rather than throwing some kid all the way out of the loop and not having to come back instead of going out and picking up trash along the road or getting rid of graffiti or whatever. That just seems more logical than
Or cleaning that room where it took place, scrubbing it down, disinfecting it.
I'll tell you that locker room needs it. That is an understatement. Just saying. It's nasty.
Okay, so I will come back with something for next month.
All right.
Before you go on.
Yes.
There is a law in the books, but I'd like to know, I'd like somebody to, if it needs to be me, I'll do it from the board, to get a definite answer from our county prosecutor. You know, we've heard secondhand that he won't. But I think, you know, we could incorporate that into this policy if we knew where he stood.
I like that idea.
You know, granted, we live in a day and age where adultery is just looked upon, but still, he has in my mind, a legal obligation to do his job. And I want to know what he's going to do.
That's what he campaigned on.
I won't disagree with that, but I think, like a lot of things, there's discretion there. I know somebody that got pulled over by the city police officer the other day.
It's a personal story?
I know them very well. And yet, I didn't get a ticket. I didn't get a ticket. See that, right? Was I speeding? Yeah, I was. That's an example, and I know we're talking apples and oranges here. They're not the same thing. But there is that discretion in a lot of things as to whether they choose to pursue different things or not. I mean, if you, and it's him, it's not me, thank goodness, but if he chose to pursue fornication, I think he could keep our courts busy on a regular basis with that. And so they've chosen not to do that, and I think you'll find that's the law about anywhere you go.
And that's the problem with this country.
Well,
Well, it's just like
And
with
that
this.
irritates me.
It's just like with this, it says hugging. You can put hugging in the policy, but yet not all hugging is pornographic. You know? So it's just,
Lewd and lascivious is another crime too, was mentioned earlier too. That definitely is a crime, lewd and lascivious conduct.
well, there were a bunch of things mentioned, and I talked to the chief for probably a half hour, 45 minutes on possible areas that could be prosecuted there. Indecent exposure. You know, different areas that, you know, certain things could be prosecuted under, and
Could we get him to come talk with us? Because
As
there's
in
one thing out there in
prosecutor?
public, the prosecutor. You know, those things that occur out in the community, I think maybe a different set of parameters than on our school property. You know, and I think I would like to see what he's gonna do to help us create this policy. To at least enforce his law end of it, so we know where we can go with it.
so why don't you and I and a couple of board members, you and I and one other board member go and visit with him?
He's over here, what, 2 or 3 days a week?
I know, well, but he's probably busy here, isn't he? 'Cause he had offices, we met with him on another issue. Mrs. Jensen and Mr. Heater and myself met with him on another issue at his office in Montpelier. That's where he wanted to meet with us. So, if I set that up?
I'll go.
Okay.
At this time of year, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna be there at any, I'm camping right now, but I wanna go.
Okay,
He's not the only guy
so,
that's busy.
okay, so,
Set it up and I'll see if I can make it, but
Okay.
don't do it in the mornings.
okay,
Try in the afternoon.
afternoon's better.
You know, if we refer this to the prosecuting attorney, and these kids come out of the high school, they will all be treated as juveniles. The court proceedings will be handled as a juvenile. At 18, their records are sealed. Worst case scenario, they go to one of the youth branches up north. And at 18, the party's over, and that record is sealed permanently. No way for them to get back in. So that's something else to keep track of. The minute they hit 18, now that's a different game. Totally different game. And it's an adult issue.
Okay, I'll try and work that out. Item number 4, what's right? The one thing I want to talk about, it wasn't written by the school district. We had to sign off on it. They use our facilities, but the after-school grant was renewed. That's done at AJ, and it was also expanded to our middle school. So that will be held there as well. The city is responsible for that, but they use our facilities, they hire staff. We have some involvement there with doing wood monitoring. The bottom line is how it affects us is that this is a good program that helps our kids that are in school. Helps them get schoolwork done and helps them to do some things that may not be happening somewhere else. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that that's something that will continue on. It was due after this year and up for to be awarded again. And the city applied, they wrote the grant, and it was approved for AJ and expanded to the middle school. So,
Under what's right, and I asked some folks to stick around, for those of you that have seniors or juniors scholarships, there's a ton of them out there, and sometimes, I've been picking on at least one student in this room about the scholarships for about 6 or 7 or 8 months. They're out there.
So have
And
her
a lot of them
parents.
are wasted. They're absolutely wasted. And there's money out there to go to college, so get after it, please. And that's what's right, because there's money out there, even local money. so go for it.
Can I ask a question in relation to that? You have a senior.
Yeah.
Did they not have a senior night in relation to a scholarship at the high school one night?
They had a FAFSA night.
Yeah, they had FAFSA.
FAFSA, okay. Federal aid.
They helped the ones that
They
did.
talked about scholarships at all there?
I don't know.
Did you go?
I didn't go
Okay.
because I just do a,
No.
You didn't go either? Okay.
just have more.
Must have been real exciting. No.
Anybody else? What's right? Before I cover my next two items.
Yeah, we had a bus driver that runs a Nowman route. But anyway, right at the start of the school year, she had actually a hole in her eye, and she hasn't been able to drive from the start of the school year till just coming back from spring break. And a couple of substitute bus drivers stepped in for what they thought was going to be a couple weeks, a month. Now they've been driving, 5 months plus, and I think that's commendable to be able to put in that situation and to serve the district that way.
Absolutely. We've had some similar situations with some certified staff and had some folks step in, but I don't know about you guys. I've been in some situations where I've been encouraged to get my CDL, and I've intentionally declined because I don't want that responsibility. I commend our bus drivers because I think it's a tough job.
I agree. Being an ex-cop, I follow the buses sometimes. They drive the proper speed, they drive proper conditions, the snow, ice in the road, and they're pretty good bus drivers. I think we have some good bus drivers in this district. Very good. You don't have freeways.
Anything else?
Okay, action items, F.
Hold on, I had two others.
Oh, sorry.
The first one, not gonna break my day or anything, but would you be interested in changing the June board meeting? I have some meetings. If it's left where it is, I'll leave that night after the board meeting to drive to Boise. Budget, oh man,
Submitted it to the county.
you did, didn't you?
It's a budget hearing.
Because we had to, never mind,
Join us by telephone.
never mind, no.
Nice try.
Okay, and then one of the things we looked at doing, and I got this today, but one of the things we looked at doing was closing down our modulars. And what we would have to do is to move computer labs into our buildings.
It's outrageous, huh?
You're sitting down, I know, but now, I guess the good side is that it comes out of plant facility money, not our general fund, okay, which is where we're really hurting. But we got 2 bids on that to do that electrical in the high school and the middle school. One's for $8,774, one's for a little over $9,000. They're amazingly close. I was very impressed with that. That doesn't have to be put out for bid because it doesn't reach the dollar figure that's that way.
Who are the companies?
Bear River Electric and South Point Electric were the 2
And what were they again?
that. One's $8,774 and the other is $9,046.
Who's the highest?
I guess I wanted to get your confirmation that that's gonna save us, our estimates were about $4,500
A year.
a year. That'll pay for.
For one building though, right? Or for all of them?
No, the middle, that dollar figure, if I recall right, was not, the middle school wasn't originally figured in that. We're closing that in this process, but that one was not figured into that. We are not able to get fully, though, everything out of the modular high school. We'll still have,
So it would take 2 years to pay it off.
it would take 2 years, yes.
And I don't see, I don't see a whole lot of exodus people, or people coming in the next 2 years. I'd love to see it, but.
I guess just what I'm saying is that, you ask us to do that, this is a part of that, and I just want a little.
If we're going to accept these bids, I would suggest that the bid that we accept be done in a local environment.
Meaning, both these are local.
No, sir, they're not
Yeah, they are.
raised.
Well, the one guy that bid it, I know that he and another partner are,
If it's outside this valley,
he built a home in this valley.
Trevor Neal lives here.
Yeah,
okay,
the guy that built, the
if
bid
the
it.
business is gonna go outside this valley, then we don't need it.
I have a question. If we move them in and we have all the kids in the schools, at what number of kids would we have before we have to start using them again? I mean, we're a lot lower than we used to be,
A lot.
a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would take quite a bit, up to like having another 180 students in the senior class like they had when they first put them in.
You know, it's all tied to students, but it's tied to faculty and how many can you fit inside the building. And there may be some other things that we need to do to continue to shrink. But
I think that was what the senior class was 180 when they first put them out, right? That year.
180 times 4, that's about right. Yeah, that'd be
Seems
640.
like it
We
was
were about,
that.
the highest I think this high school's been is about 650. So, actually, no,
It was about 10 years
you're a little higher than that, so it'd be a little less than that, probably. But you could have had some bubbles too, and we always do.
And our
So,
graduating class now is what, 70 something?
they're gonna be, I think, in the 60s this year.
So it would take a lot of people coming in to actually have to really need those buildings.
Theoretically, yes. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that's a lot of
It's
money.
nice to have the room, but if we need to cut money, we gotta cut money.
And we do. We've talked about that. And the money we're gonna save will come out of our general fund. In other words, that frees that up in the general fund. This is plant facility money.
Totally different.
And so they are different. But I just want to make sure you're on board with that.
I am. I don't know if everybody else is, but I am.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, action items?
Yeah, hold on. It was, the good superintendent was supposed to, under the treatment thing, talk about leads.
I thought you were going to.
No, that's your job. Leads was a program that was funded from, what was it?
Albertsons, J. Catherine Albertsons.
And it was 250,000 or 1 million or something. It was a tremendous amount of money. And from this school district, Steve went, Frank and I went.
Alan went, not
Alan
Steve.
went, one of the students, and we had 2 parents.
Aslan Barchi,
And the teacher.
yeah, Linda Arnell, and our parent was Heidi Tusher, and 2 board members. I think that was it.
Yeah, the last session we had, there were 4 sessions. The last session we had, they talked about something that didn't cost money. And this was probably one of the most productive sessions that I went, and I went to all 4 of them. And they came up with some things that other districts have used that Bear Lake might not find palatable, but nonetheless are something we need to look at. Grants, who writes grants? Right now we have teachers writing grants. Other districts have had parents write grants. Once they get the input from the administrators or from the teachers, to take that burden off their back. And if we get somebody in elementary school, then we have them all the way through high school. They talked about sending students that were specifically working in classes. For instance, for an English credit, they would send people to the local newspaper and work in the newspaper doing that. However, ours is a pretty small newspaper, but it's issues like that. I mean, it was just phenomenal how much we didn't learn the first 3 times, and that's being pretty blunt, but that's what it was.
Very
true. It was. Unfortunately, it didn't cost the district any money. It did cost Albertsons and Boise State some money. But there were some really unique things came out of the last one, and I will type those up, and the board needs to take a look at them, because like I say, there are some rather unique ones that have been tried and are not cost. So it's a thought. So I will bring bring that up next time or send it to Steve so he can send that to you.
Just to comment along the lines of the newspaper, not for credit, they're actually making money, but there are a number of students that write articles, in particular sports, for the newspaper. They submit those, and I don't know what the relationship is, but to one of the high school teachers, and then that teacher submits them to the paper. And I think there's some editing and things like that that go on there, but
Your son's been published.
he gets paid for it.
They pay him for it?
Yeah, they do. We can pay
And it is
him.
hard to eat.
I cut his allowance out, you know, and write more.
Wait till you buy the car.
So, anyway.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Now, action items. The F1 2013-2014 school calendar is resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. The 2013-2014 school calendar shall be approved. Any discussion?
You went through this last year, Paul. What was it that, there were specifics that we did include last year? That created probably more time out of classes for the students. Because
Hunting?
if they were gonna hunt and 3 kids went off to hunt, the rest of the students would think they get to go hunt. So I'm going right now, I don't know what the student population goes down to in attendance, but my guess would be rather considerable that they're not all out hunting.
Well, we talked a little bit about this before, and in my email to you last week, I asked you to compare, and there are some pretty big differences, because what I heard at the Fish and Game meeting and I figured would happen didn't. My crystal ball broke this winter, a couple of those cold days, and kids dropped it, and there you go. But so on this calendar, we spent quite a bit of time going back and revamping, and it caused us some heartburn and making a stretch. But so we put the deer hunt in there. That's on a Thursday. The 10th is where they're holding it. Remember the proposal was they were going to move it to the 5th, and that didn't happen. So we did put the 10th in there. The other changes we made, we changed some in-service and some teacher work days, and I don't think those are a big deal to you guys. We got some feedback from some teachers and did our best to accommodate some of those. The 27th of November was a holiday, a vacation day. I get my terminology correct now, but she's too far away to slap me. A vacation day, and it's now an early release day. So we'll be out at 1:30 on that day. That was the best trade-off that we could come up with. That's been a day that I think families have liked and staff has liked. If you're traveling, it gives you a whole another day instead of a half day to travel. But it did a couple things. One, we may still lose quite a few kids on that day. They may go. But in relation to what Paul talked about last time, we take our November child count earlier in November, and so it won't affect us. That November child count is what we base our staff allocation on for the year. And so that will be prior to that date, and it will, if it's a low week, it won't count in our best 28, 29 weeks, but it won't affect us on the staff allocation. And I think, as I'm looking through there, I think everything else, like I said, other than some in-service days and teacher work days, everything else is the same.
Just so you're aware, that day has a circle around it, and that's not in your legend. That was causing me some grief.
It's not in the legend, well, it's
One oval.
I could.
I was like, there's no circle here.
Tough crowd.
Don't confuse anybody else.
It's tough enough already.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Any questions, any concerns? it's been an interesting process, because it's, you know, it's a hard deal to do, and here's why, is because I take it to my superintendent's advisory committee, but we want people's feedback. I had some teachers at one of the buildings that wrote us a letter and said, in relation to some teacher work days, we'd like you to change these. We were able to accommodate one of 2 requests there. Honestly, there's a day there that I don't like very well, but I gave in and did what was best. And so, but the bottom line is, you know, we have over 100 employees. If we open it up, we'd have about 75 to 90 different opinions on what would work and what wouldn't. And I don't feel comfortable about doing that. We do want input in general and the concept of calendaring, but we've got to be careful not to get into a debate over.
Can't help for Christmas bells.
Christmas killed us.
Yeah.
That's what killed us. Now the kids will love it. I guarantee you.
We can't really do
But it killed as far as calendaring went. It really put a bind on days, just so they know we're out 2 full weeks during Christmas just because of when it fell. And my original suggestion was we get out half a day on Christmas Eve, but
yeah, he doesn't want to go to school on Christmas.
but Melvin and Dorothy told me no. So,
Any other discussion? Any motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the calendar for 2013-14.
I'll second.
Who's the second? All agreed?
Aye.
Aye. Any other motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second it. All
We're
is in
adjourned.
favor.